Welcome to another deep dive, and this time we're exploring God in My Hand by Joshalyn Lee.
Great book.
It is, and we're going to be focusing on chapter 1 today,
Right.
which is called The Crumbling Sanctuary, which I think is a very evocative title.
Yeah, it is. I like that a lot.
What do you think it means?
Well, I mean, just thinking about it right off the bat, it seems like there are multiple layers of meaning there.
Oh, definitely.
You have the literal crumbling sanctuary, which is St. Jude's, this abandoned church in London,
Yeah.
where Elise seeks refuge after this devastating fire. But then you also have this idea of a sanctuary as a place of safety and refuge, a sacred space.
Hmm.
So the fact that it's crumbling suggests the loss of that sanctuary,
Right.
not just physically, but
Yeah.
also maybe emotionally or spiritually.
Yeah, like the sanctuary isn't just a building, it's like a metaphor
Exact.
for
Right.
her internal state.
Yeah, which we see reflected in the very vivid descriptions of the church.
Oh, yeah. Right from the start, we get these images of skeletal remains and fractured rainbows.
Mm.
A musty scent of dampness.
Ooh, yeah, that musty scent. It's almost like you can smell it.
It's so evocative, right? Like you're right there in that space with her.
Absolutely. What stands out to you about those descriptions?
Well, they definitely create this atmosphere of decay, of loss, of something that was once beautiful and whole, now being broken and fragmented.
Right.
And I think that really mirrors Elise's own internal state. She's lost everything in the fire, her home, her family, her sense of security.
So it's almost like the building itself is a manifestation of her grief.
I mean, that's a great way to put it.
And then we have that powerful line about London,
Oh, yeah?
the one where she compares it to a snow globe shook by a naughty child.
That's the one who wanted to see the mess but not suffer the repercussions of the quake.
It's such a vivid image.
Uh,
What does that tell us about how she views her place in the world?
well, it's really highlighting the disconnect between Elise and the world around her. London is this bustling city full of life and energy,
Mm-hmm.
but Elise feels completely detached from it.
Like she's on the outside looking in. There's that sense of powerlessness, of being trapped by her circumstances while life just carries on for everyone else.
Like she's become almost a ghost, haunting this city that she once called home.
Yeah, there's definitely a ghostly quality to her existence at this point.
And then out of the blue, we have the appearance of this mysterious figure named David.
Yes, David.
He just sort of materializes in the church.
He does.
And he's described in this almost supernatural way, radiating an ethereal glow.
Yeah, it's very otherworldly the way he's portrayed.
Do you think we're supposed to take that literally, or is there a symbolic layer to it?
It's a great question. I mean, there's definitely a mystical quality to the way he's introduced, appearing and disappearing without explanation.
Right.
It makes you wonder, is he a real person? Is he a figment of Elise's imagination? Is he some kind of symbolic guide?
Right. It's almost like he's an angel,
You could definitely interpret it that way.
especially because he shows up at this pivotal moment in the chapter.
Yeah, exactly right. When Elise is starting to really grapple with her feelings about God and her place in this shattered world.
Yeah, he kind of kicks off this whole internal exploration for her.
He does, and his words are really interesting too.
Oh, definitely. He tells her that God is everywhere.
In the sunlight that warms your face,
In the wind that whispers through these ruins.
in the very stones beneath our feet.
But instead of comforting her, this seems to make Elise even more upset.
Yeah, it's a really fascinating reaction.
Why do you think that is? Why do his words have that effect?
Well, I think it's because Elise is in so much pain and anger at this point.
Mm-hmm.
She just lost everything. And the idea of God being present in all things, in the beauty of the world, it almost feels like a mockery to her in that moment.
Like, if God is really everywhere, why did he let this happen?
Exactly. It's that age-old question of suffering and faith.
And I think what's interesting is that David doesn't try to argue with her or
No.
force his beliefs on her. He just kind of listens and plants these little seeds of doubt.
But also seeds of possibility.
What do you make of his approach?
I think it speaks to the complexity of faith and the importance of allowing space for doubt and questioning. David doesn't offer easy answers or platitudes.
Right.
He understands that genuine faith often emerges from wrestling with those difficult questions, from that struggle to reconcile belief and experience.
So it's not about blind faith.
Not at all. It's about engaging with those doubts, those questions, and finding your own way through them.
And then, just as abruptly as he appeared, David vanishes,
Poof, he's gone.
leaving Elise with even more questions than answers.
Which is a great way to end part one, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely, a real cliffhanger.
Yeah, we've seen Elise's initial reaction to finding sanctuary in St. Jude's
Right.
and the impact of her encounter with David, however brief it may have been.
Yeah, so now the question is, where does she go from here?
Right. How will she grapple with the questions he's raised about her faith, about her place in the world?
And what about those mysterious footsteps?
We've got to find out what happens next.
We do stay tuned for part 2 of our deep dive into the crumbling sanctuary. Okay, so we left off with David vanishing into thin air,
Like a ghost.
and Elise is alone again in this crumbling sanctuary.
Back to square one.
But it feels different this time, doesn't it?
Oh, definitely. There's been a shift.
Like she's gone through something.
Yeah, she's not the same Elise who first walked into that church.
And I think this is where the chapter really starts to delve into her internal struggles.
Right, like all those big questions.
The ones that David's words kind of stirred up.
Yeah, what is faith? Where is God in the midst of all this suffering?
And how do you rebuild your life when everything's been shattered?
Yeah, like literally, how do you even start?
And I think one of the things the author really captures, War, in this section is that sense of hunger.
Hunger.
Yeah, like both physical and spiritual hunger.
Oh, I see.
Elise talks about rummaging for scraps of food,
Right, trying to survive.
but there's also this deeper yearning, this hunger unfed, as the chapter title puts it. Like she's searching for something more.
Something to fill the void.
Exactly.
So it's like those two types of hunger are intertwined.
Yeah, like her body needs nourishment.
And her soul does too.
And yet she seems to be pushing away the very things that might offer her that sustenance.
How so?
Well, she avoids the church services.
Right.
She doesn't go to the community meals, even when Mrs. Petrov, that kind woman from the bakery, invites her.
It's like she's isolating herself.
Exactly, like she's built this wall around herself.
Yeah, which is understandable, you know?
Oh, absolutely.
When you've been through trauma, like Elise has, it's natural to want to protect yourself.
Right, to retreat from the world.
To avoid further pain or disappointment.
It's a painful irony, though, isn't it?
Oh, so.
Well, she sought refuge in a physical sanctuary, but she's trapped in this emotional prison.
I see what you mean.
And then there's that scene where she overhears the sermon about living water.
Oh, yeah. What was that all about?
Well, living water, it's a powerful symbol. Spiritual renewal, quenching a deep thirst.
Like that hunger we were talking about.
Exactly. But Elise isn't ready to drink from that well just yet.
She's still too caught up in her anger and resentment.
And then she meets Mary,
Mary. Remind me who that is.
the woman who gives her the basket of food.
Oh, right.
And that small act of kindness,
Yeah.
it seems to have a profound impact on Elise.
It's more than just the food, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, it's about human connection.
Recognition in a moment of utter loneliness.
Like a crack in that wall she's built around herself.
Letting in a little light.
And it seems to spark something in her.
In what way?
Well, she starts noticing other people,
Oh, interesting.
their pain, their struggles. She shares her meager possessions, offers a smile, a kind word.
It's a subtle shift, but it's definitely there.
It's like she's moving from isolation to empathy.
From self-absorption to a recognition of shared humanity.
And then we have the Psalms.
The songs.
Yeah, the book of songs that she finds in the trash.
Oh, right.
What do you think draws her to those ancient texts?
Well, I think in a way the Psalms give her permission to feel her pain and her doubt. They're full of lament, anger, questioning.
All those raw emotions.
Exactly the ones she's been suppressing.
So it's like she's finding a language for her own struggle.
Right. In a way to connect with something larger than herself.
And as she immerses herself in the Psalms,
Yeah.
she starts to sense a different kind of presence.
Different from David.
Yeah, quieter, more profound.
Ooh, that's interesting.
So is this a sign that her faith is being rekindled?
It's hard to say for sure,
Yeah.
but I think what's important is that she's starting to develop her own internal compass. You know, instead of relying on external voices or interpretations.
Right, she's finding her own way.
Exactly. And that's a crucial step in any spiritual journey.
We're back and ready to unpack the final part of Chapter 1, The Crumbling Sanctuary.
Really powerful stuff.
It is, and I think one of the key things that struck me as we move towards the end of this chapter is how Elise starts to find her own strength, even as David prepares to leave.
That's a great observation. It's like she's taking all the wisdom and insight he's offered and starting to integrate it into her own understanding.
Yeah, she's not just blindly accepting what he says anymore. She's questioning, she's wrestling with it.
And that's a crucial step, right? True faith isn't about blind acceptance. It's about engaging with those doubts, those difficult questions, and forging your own path.
Absolutely. And there's this beautiful line where she says, it wasn't just about escaping homelessness or finding a job, but about discovering who I was in Christ. That really resonated with me.
It's a powerful statement of self-discovery. It suggests that her journey is about something much deeper than just physical survival. It's about finding her place in the world, her purpose, her identity.
It's tied into this idea of the church as a sanctuary, right? We talked about how the crumbling state of St. Jude's reflects Elise's internal struggles.
Right, like the building itself is a metaphor for her brokenness.
But as she starts to heal, as she starts to find her own strength, her perception of the church also changes.
It's like she's seeing it with new eyes.
Exactly, and that's where the light imagery comes in, right? There's this constant interplay of light and darkness throughout the chapter.
Oh, absolutely. From the way the sunlight filters through the broken stained glass to the sparks she sees in Mary's eyes, there's this sense that light is breaking through the darkness, both literally and metaphorically.
Yeah, and that light seems to symbolize hope, renewal, even a kind of divine presence.
And I think it's interesting how that light imagery is often connected to moments of human connection, like when she shares her food with the other homeless people, or when she sits with Mrs. Petrov in the bakery.
Right, it's like those moments of kindness and compassion are what's illuminating her path.
They're the sparks that are igniting her own inner light.
And ultimately, that's what allows her to let go of David. His departure is still painful, but she's not completely lost without him.
No, she's found something within herself that can sustain her.
And I think that's a really empowering message, especially for anyone who's struggling with their own sense of faith or purpose.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that even in the midst of brokenness, even when we feel lost and alone, we have the capacity to find our own light, to rebuild our own sense of meaning and belonging.
The Crumbling Sanctuary is ultimately a story about resilience, about the transformative power of hope and human connection.
And about the beauty that can emerge from the ruins, both literally and metaphorically.
It's been a fascinating journey exploring this chapter with you. Thanks for sharing your insights.
It's been my pleasure.
And to everyone listening, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you found it as thought-provoking as we did. We'll be back soon with another insightful exploration, so until then, keep those minds curious and those hearts open.